Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman. No, I do not have the cooties, and all you anti-vaxxers, I'm not wearing it because of that. I'm wearing it for another reason. But anyway, today's going to be talking about hope, and I love the word hope. And my second thing is we'll be talking about food, and as you can tell, I love food. So we're going to be talking with the two Ricks. I'm excited. My brother, we got connected, and I'm so blessed to be able to have him come on the show because, as you guys know, I love hope, I love resiliency, and I love recovery. So my brother is going to drop some serious knowledge. Welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing amazing, Richard. Thank you very much. And I think I like Rick Squared a little better.
I like that.
I think it
I
works
like
perfectly
that.
for us.
So before I forget, because I do have a traumatic brain injury, if I don't ask the question, I forget it. What is your definition of resiliency?
Yeah, man. You can go to the dictionary and look that up, but to me, it's it's about getting through anything, but not just on your own. Like, when we think of resiliency, a lot of the times we do think about, strength that we carry inside. And yes, absolutely. But we also require strength from other people. So I believe that part of resiliency is accepting help from other people. If you're not resilient, you won't ask for help. So I believe that resiliency also has to do with accepting and asking for help at sometimes in those lives, but getting through it no matter what, whether it's help or not.
I love it, brother. So first of all, let's get it started. Tell us a little bit about where you come from, where you grew up, and how did you come about joining the military?
Yeah, absolutely. So from upstate New York. I grew up in a little town called Windsor, New York, right
No,
outside of
well,
Binghamton. Yeah, I know you're not too far from that
Red,
area.
the Binghamton Red Barons, right?
Well, old school. That's old. That might be old school. That might be old school. Um, so yeah, Binghamton, New York. Now I live in Vestal, New York, and was born and raised up here, and joined the Army and went to Fort Hood, Texas. So I had my time in Texas a little bit, and I believe you were a tanker, correct?
Yes, and I actually did most of my time at Fort Hood.
I didn't know that.
Spent all my money in Killeen, Texas,
Ha ha
at
ha.
all the bars. So yeah, I got broke in Killeen, Texas.
I was only there for a year, so I couldn't break myself. Thankfully, I wasn't there long enough. But that also means that you probably went through Fort Knox,
Yep,
and
Fort
so did
Knox,
I.
86.
And so did I. I went through Fort Knox in 2004 as a Cav Scout. So the other side of the base a little bit, with the tankers.
19 Delta, baby.
19 Delta, and I can remember those tankers running by us in the morning and saying, "When in doubt, shoot a scout."
That's it. Well, and the funny thing is, I went from being a tanker to becoming a Cav Scout. So
You did.
I did both sides.
So you just switched to 19s. You went
Yeah,
from 19 Kilo to 19 Delta.
yeah.
I like it. I like it. Yeah.
So
So
what made you join the military, and why the Army, and why Cav Scout?
yeah. So why the Army? So the Army, I always make the joke that I couldn't fit through the recruiter's door for the Air Force. So that's one reason I didn't join the Air Force. Their limitations were a little more extreme than the other branches. Um, but I went into the Army recruiter and I was talking to them and I said, I want to join. And I didn't really know what branch at that time, but I wanted to join something. And just talking to the recruiters, and I talked to the Army recruiters and I said, I'm going to go talk to the Marine recruiters next. And I can remember the Army recruiters saying, "Well, I just want you to know that's a whole different animal right there. Those Marines." And I've met a lot of Marines in my life, and I know what he's talking about. So, he kind of grabbed me and pulled me in, and I felt like the Army was the right decision for me. And when I went to MEPS, I went to MEPS in Syracuse, New York, and I can remember when I signed my contract, there weren't very many options open. It was Cav Scout, it was a fueler, and something else, something with transportation. I can't remember exactly, but there weren't many options. And I did want to have some type of combat job, so Cavalry Scout was the option for me. Now, when I called my dad, because my dad was excited, because I was 21 when I ended up joining. So it was a little time after school, and, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, but I needed to get my life on track, and I knew the Army would help me with that. So when I called my dad and I told him the job that I chose, he said, "What job did you get?" I said, "Bath and laundry specialist." And he on the phone was dead silent. He's like, "What in the heck are you doing? Like, bath and laundry specialist?" I'm like, "I'm kidding. I'm a Cav Scout." Now, I think he was worried that bath and laundry specialist wasn't going to give me many options when I got out of the military. But then again, what does a Cav Scout get you? I know how to drive a tank and shoot a 25 millimeter. But so I chose Cav Scout, and I can remember I had to lose some weight when I first got in. I had to put myself to the test, and really, I was an athlete in high school, but then out of high school, I didn't really do a whole lot of athletic stuff. So for 3 years, I gained some weight. So I had to lose some weight before I went in. And I can remember going to the recruiter's office and, or not the recruiters, but MEPS again. And there was a Navy guy there who was working the tape, and he would tape me, around the waist and around the neck. And I was standing as tall as I could, sucking in my belly as hard as I could, and making my neck as big as I could. And he was taping me. He's like, "Listen, I'm not taping you." He's like, "Stand normal." I'm like, "What do you mean? I am standing normal." And he's like, "I know what your recruiters told you to do." So I failed that tape, and I knew I was going to. And I came back a couple weeks later, did the same thing, stood the same way, and he said, "Stop that. Don't do that." And eventually I stood normal. He taped me, and I did pass. And he's like, "Why were you standing like that? Like, you lost, I think it was like 20 pounds since the last time I was there." It's like, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "I need to go. Like, I'm ready now. I don't want to do this again in a month or two. I'm ready to go right now." So I passed the tape, and I ended up joining, and I lost, I think, another 30 pounds in basic training. Pretty crazy.
All right. Now, normally on this show, we don't talk about war stories or anything like that, but obviously,
right,
something happened. So we're going to talk about it a little bit, because I believe the backstory is sometimes more important than the front story.
Sure.
Because I had to hear the shit that people went through, and how they got out of it.
Right.
So to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Take us back to that day, but take us back to the day before. What kind of person were you the day before?
Oh, man, that's the perfect question, because I'll tell you who I was a week before, because this is a conversation that I had with my friends in a tent in Iraq. My buddy told me, he's like, "Do you remember the conversation we had a week before your injury?" And I was like, "I don't, I remember conversations, but not really." He's like, he told me that I told him. I said to him, "If I ever lose my leg, I want you to shoot me." So that's who I was a week before my injury. If I ever lose my leg, because we were having guys that were getting injured and losing arms and losing legs, and I said, "If I ever lose my leg, I want you to shoot me." Because I didn't believe that I could get through my life without my leg. Like, I was a soldier. I'm not a soldier if I lose my leg. That's what I believed. And, I was a leader. And before that, I was a wrestler and a football player. And I'm none of those things without my legs. So just take my life. Like, that's crazy for me to think about, because that's, more than the exact opposite than I am today. But that's who I was before that. I just didn't believe that I could get through something like that. And, I give myself a little bit of a break, because I don't think many people do believe they can get through something like that until you have to face it. And when I faced it is when I realized, I can get through it.
All right. So take us back to the morning when you were getting all locked and rocked and ready to rock.
Yeah.
You were getting all ammoed up. And what was your thought process going out the wire that day?
Well, that was 9 months into my deployment. So, it's just routine. When we first got to Iraq, one thing we did all the time before we left the gate was pray. Every time we would pray before we left the gate. 9 months in, we didn't pray anymore. We just went out and we just did our thing. You just become immune to the possibilities that things might happen. You just go and do your job. So we, got our stuff ready like we did every day. Myself, my buddy Sergeant Luis Montez, and my other buddy Specialist Andrew Lowe. I was the gunner that day. Montez was the Bradley commander, and Lowe was our driver. And we went out and we went on a patrol. And I don't know our exact mission that day. I can't remember exactly what we were doing. I think we were going to meet somebody in one of the villages there. And, one of the rules of the military is you never travel the same route twice. But when there's only a few routes to travel, you just have no choice. So we were on that route many times before. And we rolled out, and we were the 5th vehicle in the convoy, and there were only 5 in our convoy. It was 3 Humvees, 2 Bradleys, and being the rear vehicle means you're rear security. And on a dirt road, all you see is dirt, because all that dust that's been kicked up from the 4 vehicles in front of you, you can't see anything. So it's not a very fun place to be. So we decided, we did a short halt, and we asked the Bradley in front of us. We said, hey, can we move up? And they're like, yeah, sure. So we moved up, and we continued our movement. And probably about 2 minutes later, we were hit with an IED. My vehicle was hit with an IED. The IED went through the bottom of my vehicle up into the turret where I was sitting, but also in the turret. If anyone knows anything about Bradleys, that's also where the fuel tank sits. And it hit the fuel tank. So 160 some gallons of JP8 fuel covered my body, and instantly I was on fire. First thing that happens in a situation like that to anyone is survive. Like, I got to survive this. How do I survive it? And first thing I had to do was get out of the vehicle. And the only way out was to climb through the top. Our vehicle wasn't facing straight forward, or our turret wasn't facing straight forward. So that door that you climb in through the back is no longer there. And even if it was, I would never have gone out that way. So the hatch above me that I entered through every day was left open. And thank God I left that hatch open, because if I hadn't left that hatch open, there's no way I would have found the lever to open it with the chaos, with the smoke and the fire. So thankfully I didn't have to do that. I climbed through the top of the vehicle. Once I got to the top of the turret, I knew I had to get to the ground next thing. And I only had enough time to jump, and I couldn't see because of the fire. The fire was covering my eyes. It was covering my face. So it was covering my eyes. I couldn't see. So I just had to jump, take a leap of faith, and hope I would make it to the ground. And the top of the Bradley to the ground is 10 feet. So it was going to be a long jump, and I was doing it blind. So when I landed on the ground, I couldn't brace myself for the impact of the landing because couldn't see the ground. So when I landed, I snapped my leg. I broke my leg very badly below my knee. And that ended up in an amputation of my right leg below my knee. Now, when I was on the ground, this is where I learned about hopelessness. Because when I was on the ground, I did what we were all taught to do: stop, drop, and roll, and it didn't work because there was too much fire and too much fuel. And I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't stand up and run. I couldn't, even if I could stand up and run, I couldn't see. So where was I going to go? So I gave up. And biggest regret of my life, I gave up. I gave up the fact that I would live. I just accepted that I would not make it through that day. And like I said, it's the biggest regret of my life, and I will never, ever allow myself to feel that way ever again. That doesn't mean I won't deal with difficult things ever again. That's for sure. But I will never allow myself to feel that way. So I gave up hope in that moment. Thankfully, it was only for a second, because I ended up rolling in one direction, and I ended up rolling down a little hill and into a canal that was there. And the canal saved my life. It had just enough water in it to put the fire out. A couple of my buddies found me, carried me out. And about 30 minutes later, the Blackhawks came and took us away to an Army hospital in Baghdad. And then I think about 30 hours later, I was in a hospital in San Antonio, Texas, at Brooke Army Medical Center, where I spent the next 6 months in the hospital.
All right. So, I'm a former treadhead, and, I was a gunner on an M1. I was also a tank commander at one time.
Yeah.
And knowing, being a gunner, we always have the drivers and the loaders, below us.
Yeah.
You got hit. And I know you're going through what you're going through. But were you also thinking about what the fuck happened to my guys?
Yeah. And my guys, my buddy Montez, he didn't make it. So he ended up in another canal. He put the fire out as well, but when he got to the hospital, he had some internal stuff that was going on, and he didn't end up making it. And when I got out of the canal and my buddies carried me over to the helicopters were going to pick us up, I can remember Montez and Lowe both over there, and I can remember Montez walking around with no pants on. They cut his pants off, and I can remember he was so angry that him being the Bradley commander, he believed it was his fault that that happened to us, and it obviously was not. It wasn't our driver's fault. It wasn't my fault. There was nothing we could have done. Those 3 Humvees in front of us drove right over that IED, not knowing it was there. But whoever set that IED off was, they were aiming for a Bradley. That's why we got hit. So yeah, I was thinking about them, but crazy enough, in that helicopter, Montez, who didn't make it, was thinking about me more than he was thinking about himself. I can remember him telling the medic in the helicopter, make sure he gets enough morphine, give him some morphine. And he was just, he was there for me, in those last moments that I ever saw or talked to him ever again. I can remember that especially.
Now, I had a friend of mine, he was on the show last month. His daughter suffered 3rd-degree burns throughout her body, and she's still recovering to this day. And we're working on setting up a Ronald McDonald House for burn victims. So that's something we're working on. But take us through, we see shit on TV with the burn victims and all that. Take us through what it's like being burned up and what it felt like laying in that bed. Because I know, get all the surgeries, all the reconstructive surgeries, all the cleanings and all that stuff. Take us into what it was really like.
Yeah. So I have kids, I speak to kids in schools all the time, and I have kids that ask me, hey, did it hurt when you were on fire? And people laugh at that question because obviously it hurts when you're burned, but it didn't hurt when I was on fire. So it's not a silly question at all. It actually didn't hurt at all because of everything I was going through. But the hospital, that's a different story. That is, I can't even explain the pain that went on in there. The showers, you heard the word shower, and it was just like you dreaded it. And you would pray, and you would beg and plead the nurses, like, hey, not a shower today. Please just give me a bed bath. A bed bath hurt too. But a shower, you knew in a shower they were going to debride that skin, and they were going to take all that skin off, and it was awful. And not only awful for me who was taking a shower, but there was a stall next to me of somebody else who was in the shower, and you had to deal with their screaming the whole time. So, hell on earth to me is an ICU of a burn unit, but also hell on earth is full of angels, because those nurses and those doctors, what they dealt with, it's amazing. So those are the nurses those are the angels that I'm talking about. Yeah. So the pain in that hospital was excruciating. I can think of one time I had a gauze mask on my face. They put to cover all my wounds, and part of the debriding process, but they would keep it moist, and they would come in and spray it with a water bottle. And I can remember one night, I don't know if it didn't get sprayed enough or what, but in the morning when they went to take it off, it was completely stuck to my face, and they had to pull it off. And I can remember them giving me a lot of pain medication that day. And I can remember actually throwing up when they were taking it off. So if I can think of pain in the hospital, that's the one story that I can always go back to and think about. And that was some of the most excruciating. And that was just one day. There were so many days like that, especially the first 3 months when I was in the ICU. So it's brutal, man. And I pray for that little girl. You said it was I pray for that little girl and what she's going through. And, she's got a long road ahead. But I'm telling you, man, if you keep a positive mindset, and the people around you keep a positive mindset in your in that person's view, like, good things are going to come out of it. My parents never talked about negative things when I was in that hospital. They wouldn't allow the doctors to talk about negative things in that hospital room. Only positive things. Negative things went out into the hallway, went into an office. So if that girl has positive influences around her, she's not just going to make it through. She's going to be better when she gets through it. Like, that's crazy to think about, but I truly, truly believe that.
Well, and that was something that he said, the way she walks around now, she says, if this didn't stop me, nothing's going to stop me.
Right.
So she
Right.
became unstoppable.
Yeah.
And she says she's literally on fire to live.
That's right. Absolutely.
So now talk to us. Well, first of all, let's thank our sponsors because I want to get a little bit deep into what we're talking about. Guys, as you know, I was with GNC for over 30 years. I was with in the military for 23. I love pre-workouts. I love coffee, but most of them tasted like ass. Or if I started drinking it, I'd have to go to the bathroom like 5 minutes later. So I came out with my own coffee, Vertical Momentum Coffee, and it's hand roasted by veteran hands. And 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with homelessness and PTSD. We're actually setting up FOB Rush to where we're going to be able to take 12 single soldiers and 2 soldiers with families in for 1 whole year, take care of them physically, mentally, spiritually, 0 cost to the soldier. So, guys, if you love coffee, if you love coffee with a mission, write coffee down below and I'll get that to you. Also, you guys know I'm totally open and honest at all times. I am a diabetic. My blood sugar at one time was like 500. I started using this product called Honey Bees Honey in all my coffees and my tea, which I'm drinking right now. And my blood sugar has dropped almost 300 points just by giving up sugar and just using this pure honey. And it's actually, the guy that owns the company is actually a beekeeper. So it actually goes from the hive to your house. So if you love honey, let me know down below and I'll get that information to you. So, brother, let's talk because when I lost my vision for about 8 to 10 months, I was in almost total darkness. And you have a lot of time to think. There's nothing else to do but think. And I started listening to self-development, Ed Milet, Gary Vaynerchuk, blah, blah, blah. And something that stuck with me is like, you can either get bitter or you can get better. So talk to me about how you started to reinvent and reimagine your life while you're still sitting for that 3 months in the hospital.
Yeah. So that 3 months in the ICU, I'm telling you right now, Richard, I wasn't thinking about getting better at that time. I was in that bitter stage. And I was in that bitter stage a little longer than I should have been. But again, I give myself a little leeway on it because of what I was going through and never going through anything like that before and not knowing how to get through anything like that. I had no clue. So I was bitter for a lot longer than I should have been. But at some point you get tired of that bitterness and you got to change it. Like, God, 17 years later, I could still be carrying that bitterness around with me. And what the heck's that going to do for me? It's going to do nothing for me. So, right. Yeah, at some point you got to get better. And I will today tell you that what happened to me in Iraq that day was the best thing that ever happened to me. So more than better, I would say it's the best thing that ever happened to me because of the things that I saw that came out of it. Early on, it was still about 3 years after I got hurt, maybe a little less, maybe 2.5 years. I read a book by Randy Pausch, The Last Lecture, and it's one of my favorite books. It's a short read, easy read, and Randy was dying of pancreatic cancer, and he wrote it while he was dying. He had a family, a wife, and I believe 2 kids. And I read the book, and there was one part in the book I can remember especially where he said, everybody that was around him knew he was dying, and because he was a professor at Carnegie Mellon, and they just knew his situation. But he was driving one day, and he was stopped at a red light, and a car pulled up next to him, and he's not paying any attention to the car, but they're stopped at the red light together, and eventually they move on, light turns green, they go on. And a couple of weeks later, he's at a gathering, and this lady comes up to him, and she said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I was stopped at a red light next to you a couple of weeks ago, and I looked over and I saw you, and you were like singing and dancing and smiling in your car." And she's like, "How do you have such a positive outlook, even though you know you're dying?" And this is the part that got me. He said to her, until that moment, he didn't realize that he was actually happy. Like truthfully and honestly happy. He thought he was putting on a face for everyone. Everybody saw him as happy because in public you put on this smile for people to help them out. And that's what he was doing. But there was nobody in the car with him that day. He didn't know that somebody was in a car watching him, and he was still laughing and smiling. Now, he didn't recognize it until she brought it up. And that's when I asked myself, Rick, are you really happy? And I was, because there were days that no one was around and I had a smile on my face because I was alive and I was lucky to be there. So when I read that part of the book, it just made such an impact on my life, and recognizing that I was actually happy and not just putting on a face for everyone else. It changed me. And I actually wrote him a email, never expecting a response from him because, he only had a couple months left to live. And he did respond. And it was, an email that I will save forever. And I printed it out and I will save that forever. That was a moment in my life where things started to change for me. But again, I didn't get through that on my own. I tell that story. And yeah, I had resilience in that. I was strong, but I also got something from somebody else in that situation. It was him. He helped me through that. Like, we all think that we're so strong and we can get through anything. And it's great to have that mindset, but we have to also recognize that we need people in our lives to help us out. And I don't have to give him any credit for helping me out. I could just say, I read a book and it was great. And, it made me realize some things, but I give him the credit. He got me through that moment and through that part of my life. And I've had, thousands of people in my life who I just give credit to for the fact that I'm here today and doing what I'm doing today.
Now, you also got involved with the Wounded Warriors, correct?
Not too much the Wounded Warrior Project. Early on they were in the hospital and stuff like that, but I never really got involved with them. I got involved with some other little organizations, one in San Antonio called Operation Comfort, really small organization that started by fixing up the waiting room in the ICU at the burn center. That's what they started. They put new couches in, and that wasn't for me. That was for my parents. Like, my parents were there every single day. And so many organizations along the way that have done so much for myself and my family. Operation Comfort is just one of the first ones that I think of. And they're small, and I love them. I love the people involved. Always have.
Because, that's something that really doesn't get talked a lot about. My wife is my best friend, my lover. She's my everything. But for almost a year straight, she had to guide me to the bathroom. She had to do things that most people shouldn't or wouldn't do.
Right.
And, a lot of us don't really talk about, what the family goes through. We just talk about what the victims or what the soldiers go through. So talk to us a little bit about, what the family went through during this whole recovery time.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now. So I'm married today. I have 2 little girls. They're my world. But I didn't have them when I was first injured. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm glad I did not. I'm glad I was not married. I'm glad I didn't have children to watch what was going on. I honestly saw too many relationships disintegrate because of what was going on. They shouldn't have to go through that. But if they want to have that relationship last forever, you got to go through it. And I saw a lot of significant others who just left and said, this isn't what I signed up for. And they left the relationship. So I'm so glad I did not have that even as a possibility. Now, if I had my wife back then, she would have stuck with me. I just know because she met me after my injury. She met this guy right here, the guy that you're looking at right now. That's who she met. So I know she would have stuck with me, but I saw that and I was glad that I didn't have that. Now, my parents, they never signed any papers to join the military, but they sure did join the military when I got injured because they sacrificed, I think about that. I have a hard time saying I sacrificed anything by joining the military. I always say I gained more than I lost I found new things in my life that are amazing because of what happened to me. So I have a hard time saying I sacrificed. But my parents, they left home, they left their job to come and be with me. My brother had to come down and be with me, and he ended up living with me for a while. My other brother got, left at home. He had just graduated high school, and he got left to, take care of the house. So my family absolutely sacrificed. I always say that I wouldn't change that day because of I wouldn't get back here if I did. If I changed the day I was injured, and I wouldn't have to put my parents through it. And I could, but I could save Montez if I did go back, because that's the only reason I would save Montez and change it so my family didn't have to go through it. But I also think that my family would say that they didn't want it to happen, neither did I, but they're all stronger because of it. I believe that they would say the same thing that I say. I'm stronger because of it. It doesn't mean I wanted it to happen. It certainly doesn't mean they wanted it to happen. But we grow from these things. And, there is no time machine. We can't go back in time and change the past. But I do believe we can change how we look at the past and things that have happened to us. So that's it. Honestly, my whole story, the hardest thing for me to talk about is my family and what they had to go through. That phone call that they got, my brothers got, my parents got, my friends got, that's the hard part for me, because that's where I was helpless. I had a lot of say in my recovery. I had no say in how they handled my recovery. And that's how they felt about it with me. They had no say about my recovery, but they had a say in their own. And I believe today that's why I don't struggle. Maybe part of the reason that I don't struggle with any post-traumatic stress. My injury was my injury, and I had to get through it. I didn't have to helplessly watch anyone else go through it. And I think that's part of the reason that I don't struggle with post-traumatic stress today.
All right. So then, let me ask you a question, because I know that if you're a caregiver and you don't take care of yourself, because I believe that, and I tell everybody, that's why I keep an empty cup here. I can't pour from this cup if it's empty.
Right.
And you can't help somebody, if you yourself is not healthy.
Right.
So talk to the caregivers out there to let them know that it's okay to do some self-care even while you're taking care of somebody else. Because if you go down the tubes, everybody's going down the tubes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so part of that self-care is also recognizing what you're really doing for that person. A lot of people will just sacrifice their time and their lives to help people, but they never give themselves any credit for helping the people. They never stop and say, man, you know what? Sometimes it's okay to say, man, what I'm doing is really awesome. Sometimes it's okay to say that, pat yourself on the back once in a while. And I don't think people do that enough. They don't stop themselves and say to themselves, you know what? I'm doing something really good. That's fuel. That's fuel. You'll burn yourself out if you don't give yourself any credit. But yeah, you got to take care of yourself, right? You can't give what there isn't there to give. If there's nothing there to give, you can't help other people. So you got to take care of yourself. You got to refill that cup once in a while. And, in my life today, helping other people is my refilling the cup, is my fuel.
Me too.
That's what fills my cup. And, taking time for myself is going out and helping people. That's what feels good. And people were like, oh, take some time for yourself. Give yourself a break. That is my break. I don't know. That's what I like to do. That's what feels good.
All right. So tell to me, what is Sweethearts and Heroes?
Yeah. So Sweethearts and Heroes, an organization that I got on board with about 12 years ago. And you hear that name, and we're in schools all the time. We've been in front of almost 2 million students across the country. When people sometimes hear Sweethearts and Heroes, we get a phone call and they're like, I don't know if we want you to come to our school, because Sweethearts is the girl, obviously, and Heroes is the boy. And we don't really want that here. That's not what it's about at all. Sweethearts, the word sweetheart came from the word bully, actually. So in the 16th century, the word bully was made, and it was made differently than what we know it as today. In the 16th century, a bully was somebody who pushed you over and over and over again, but they did it to make you better. And that's really what a sweetheart is. They did it to make you better. Like, I think about this: when I was in the hospital, I was surrounded by 16th century bullies. People who came into my room when I didn't want to get out of that hospital bed because I was in a ton of pain and I was dealing with a lot in my life. And they'd come in and they say, Rick, I know you're dealing with a lot, but you got to get up, man. You got to get out of that bed. And they would push me. And you know what? I didn't like them on those days. I don't like them on those days. I love them today because they pushed me, and I wouldn't be here without them. So the word bully in the 16th century, when it was actually invented, it meant sweetheart. So that's where the sweetheart part of our organization comes from. We really started as an anti-bullying organization, but today we always say that we can take that word bullying right out of our presentation, and it's the same exact presentation. And it's just about taking care of each other and being there for each other and recognizing what people are going through in life. You don't know what people are dealing with until they talk about it. So that's where the sweethearts come in. And then the heroes in that, in our name, is the people who step up, jump into action, and actually do something about the situations that they see, when they actually intervene in the bullying situations that they see. So that's Sweethearts and Heroes. My partner, Tom Murphy, he hates me talking about this, but he's an ex-UFC fighter, and he trained mixed martial arts for a long time, and that's our hook. He's got that hook, and I got my hook. The way I look, and right then we got their attention. So we've been doing this now for a long time, and like I said, almost 2 million students we have talked to, and we just got back yesterday, Tom and I, from California, where we spoke to some Marines in Camp Pendleton. Same message. We're talking about hopelessness, and that number's too high. And we all know that number's too high. I don't know if it's still 22 a day. That was a big number that people were saying for a long time. I don't know if that's what it's at anymore, but it doesn't matter what the number is. It's too high. And Marines, students in school, they all need to remember what hope is. HOPE, hold on, possibilities exist. And yesterday I talked about acceptance in the world and purpose in the world. Two things that we require to live, not just food, shelter, and water. We need to have a purpose in life. That's just fact. We got to have a purpose. And then we also need to have acceptance. People say I'm a lone wolf, and that's just not true. Even the lone wolf is looking for the pack. They got separated. They got lost. So that's what I talked about with those Marines. And that's similar to what I talk about with students in a different presentation that we do.
Something I talk about all the time. And by the way, I want to have Tom come on the show. So that's like to hook that up. But the lone wolf, he don't eat. He doesn't get protected.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't pay being the lone sheep.
No.
But something I wanted to, talk about is, we talk about the number of suicides from first responders and veterans, way too high. But in my town, I'm in charge of, it used to be called the DARE program. It's not DARE program anymore. But on average, 5,000 adolescents attempt suicide every day.
Yeah.
In the United States.
Yeah.
And it's because what we're talking about now, they feel hopeless. They don't feel that they can be themselves. They're trying to be somebody else with all these filters and social media and all this. Yeah. So talk about, what you see with our children today, since you talk to so many of them.
I mean, they are dealing with, I can tell you right now, I'm glad I'm not a kid today. Their world is just different. The social media world that they live in is just different. So if we get back into the bullying talk, when we were young, you could walk away from a bullying situation, and then once you're out of that, you're out of it. It's gone for a minute. They can't escape it. It's always at their fingertips. It's always on their phone. It's always on their computer. It's always there. It's right next to their head when they go to bed. It's hard for them to escape that stuff. And then they don't even know how to truly use the social media, and the things they post, they don't realize will have an effect on them. And then when it does have an effect on them, it's usually a negative effect. So these kids are dealing with a lot. And, outside of that, what they're dealing with at home. What else are they dealing with at home? What kind of difficult situations are they dealing with at home? All those things added together, how can a kid learn? How can a kid help other people? Like, there's just so much going on in their world. So we let them recognize that there's help on the way, or there's hope on the way, or you're the hope for other people. Like, that's the biggest message. So really, when we talk about anti-bullying, it's bystander empowerment. It's not about stopping the bully. It's not about even helping the kid that's bullied. I do a little bit of that, but it's about everybody else recognizing that they can do something about it, that they don't just sit back and watch. And I'm trying to think of the quote from Albert Einstein: "The world is a dangerous place, not because of evil people, but because of those who choose to do nothing about it." It's those who sit back and just, we're never going to get rid of all the evil in the world, but we can stop it when it happens. And when you see it, do something about it. So it's about letting kids recognize that they probably are the solution for the other kids. I'm not the solution for those other kids, because I go into a school and then I leave. And I will probably never see some of those kids ever again. Now, we do go back to schools over and over again, but those kids that are in the room with them, they're going to see them every day for 9 months. Those are the kids that are going to help them. So my job is to let those other kids recognize that they are the hope that those other kids need. And when they're struggling, because they know what struggle looks like, they know what difficulty looks like. When they see somebody struggling, they need to do something about it. And they need to give them the hope that they need to get through it. That's the message. And that's the message for all of us, Richard. I mean, we all carry that hope, every one of us in this world. And giving it to other people sometimes is difficult, because it's about getting involved in other people's situations. But you know what? If we could have got involved and we didn't, and something happens, do we have to kind of own up to that a little bit? I think we do.
Yep. And I also think, I got a 21-year-old boy, I got a 19-year-old boy, and I got an 11-year-old girl. And my boys still get hugs, still get kisses. I tell them I love them. I have no shame in my game. I tell my daughter she's beautiful every day. I tell her, she's smart. She can do whatever she wants in this world. So I think a lot of it starts at home. I don't want my daughter to go looking for something that she didn't get at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to be, because I grew up without a father, so I try to be the best father, even though I fail so many times.
Yeah.
But please talk about that, especially being a father of 2 little girls, of how important it comes from the outside, from the inside out,
right,
instead of the outside in.
Yeah, in the end, I mean, it comes down to the saying, we're a product of our environment, and our kids, what are we doing for them? And my girls and my wife are the most important people in my life, and knowing that I can influence a part of their life is extremely important to me. Now, I know that as they get older, my influence will get less and less. That's just how it works. My influence will get less, and their peers' influence will get more. But what I can do is I can control the environment a little bit of who their peers are and who they're hanging out with a little bit, for now. Like I said, I have an 11-year-old and I have a 3-year-old. But my influence on them will slowly get less and less. That's just how it happens as an adult. But their peers will get more and more. So I just recognize that right now, 11 and 3, I still have an influence on them. And then but I think about when I go to those schools and I meet some of these kids, I know what they're dealing with at home, and it's not good. And then, when they come to school, we expect them to learn math. And how are they supposed to learn math when they come home and they're trying to figure out what they're going to have for dinner, because mom and dad, who knows where they are, or they're sleeping because they're, working off a hangover or working off something they did the night before. Like, how are those kids supposed to learn? So I know I can control my environment, but then I go into these schools and I just meet kids who are dealing with the worst. And you know what? I can never say I can relate with them. I can't. I'm 40, and people will be like, "Oh man, you've gone through the worst." I don't know about that. I was an adult when I went through it. And some of these kids, these 10, 11, 12-year-old kids who are dealing with, in my mind, much worse than what I could ever have gone through. I can't relate with them, but what I can do is let them recognize that they can get through it. That's a fact. You can now, at some point, you have to make a choice. You have to choose whether or not you do something about it. At some point, you have to do that. But also, you have to accept help from other people. You got to do that. And, I'm just so blessed that my mom and dad were amazing to me. My wife's parents were amazing to her. And, we learned a lot from them. And, we can teach our girls the same thing. And, still worry for sure. Even though I know we're teaching them the right things, I still do worry because you can't control everything. That's for sure. That's for sure.
All right. So then, for the last couple minutes, this is a veteran, also a business podcast.
Yeah.
I'm sure that, what happened to you opened up a lot of doors, but I'm also sure it closed a few of them.
It sure did.
So what is it like, going from military where we knew where we stood? If you were wearing a uniform, I seen your rank. I seen if you were deployed. I knew where you came from if I knew the badge.
Yeah.
So what was it like coming out into the civilian sector, trying to make your way as a civilian?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I talked to the Marines about purpose, and my purpose was I was a soldier. That was my purpose. I was a leader, and I loved it. And then I got blown up, and that purpose was gone because I was no longer a soldier. I was no longer a leader. And right now I had to figure it out again. And thankfully I did figure it out. I found that I could do this. I could talk to people and help them. And I could do this public speaking thing, which I never, ever believed I could do. I actually made a mistake by telling somebody that's what I wanted to do. I went to one of those events, an organization called Impact a Hero down in Texas. And I went to the event. A guy came up to me and said, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And I was like, recover. Because I was still a disaster. It was only a few months after I got out of the hospital. But that's not what I said to him. I said, I want to be a public speaker. That's terrifying. I never wanted to be a public speaker. I don't know why the heck I ever told him I did. There was a man named Dave Reaver who was a Vietnam War veteran who was burned very badly. And I listened to Dave a lot. And, I think I wanted to be like him. And so that just came out of my mouth. I want to be a public speaker. And he helped me make that happen. I didn't do that on my own. Again, so finding purpose in life, it takes other people to help us. Like, Richard, I know you're not here today doing this right now if it wasn't for other people in your life to help you get here. Like,
yep, and I got my close circle. I call them my amigos.
Yeah.
Talk to them every day. And if I'm screwing up, they're going to be like, "Hey, pal, you need to step. How can you talk about coming back if you don't come back?"
Right.
So I have my people where they keep me in check.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things I have one of the things that bothers me the most, but it bothers me because I know it's just not true and that person isn't recognizing it. But and I'm sure you've heard this before, even probably on your show, but somebody may be saying that they're self-made. Like, I have a problem with that. And I have a problem with that because you're not. You were helped to get here. That doesn't mean you're not resilient. That doesn't mean you're not strong and you're not tough. Like, and maybe you were dealt a rough hand growing up and you did the opposite of what your parents do, but you didn't get there on your own. Even your parents, who maybe weren't great influences on your life, actually probably influenced you to not be like them. So even in that situation, nobody is self-made. You just got to learn to give other people credit too. That's part of that. Yeah, I could certainly say all of the stuff I got through. Well, no, I couldn't certainly say that because it doesn't even ring well in my head. It's the first time I was going to ever say that. Oh, I got through it on my own because I'm really strong, and that's not true, man. My doctors and my nurses, I absolutely wouldn't be here without them. So I'm not self-made. I am a product of the people that I've surrounded myself with. That's what it comes down to.
Well, for me, when somebody asks me that question, and I say, well, if it wasn't for my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, I wouldn't be here at all.
Yes.
He's given me it all, and it's all his anyway.
Right.
So I'm just here to borrow it a little bit.
That's right.
Have fun in life. So, now talk to us because, all right, you start speaking and you start getting out there, and then all of a sudden people get slapped with this whole COVID-19.
Yeah.
Everything gets shut down. Well, not
Yeah.
everything. Texas is a great state, by the way. But here in New Jersey, everything got shut down. There was no events. So
Yeah.
what was that like? Now you're a speaker, and all of a sudden, a lot of the events got shut down.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
how did you go through that?
I was done. So, I talk about being blown up in Iraq, and then COVID hits and you're blown up in a different way. And, here we go. Purpose is taken away. That's kind of what it felt like. My purpose when I was a soldier was taken away when I was blown up in Iraq. And then my purpose of being a public speaker was taken away when COVID hit, because every school shut down. And that's what we were doing. We were in schools. So we did a few presentations online, but, it's hard to fill that cup that way. And I was having a hard time with that. It wasn't really filling the cup. So I had a lot of time on my hands. Luckily, we were still busy because we had our girls, Tenley and Grace was only, maybe 5 months old, or not even, just a couple months old when COVID hit. So we were busy with her. And I'll tell you right now that I just see good things in everything now. I do. I found the amazing things that came out of me being injured in Iraq. I got to raise my little girls because of COVID. Like I saw those things. So not right away, took me a little bit, but I did see them. And, my wife and I, we actually, March, April, May, probably 2 months into that COVID, the lockdown, we bought a restaurant, or we decided to buy a restaurant. And it was a restaurant that was in my wife's family forever, for the last 20 years. But it's been a restaurant for 70 years, that her family owned it for 20. And we knew that we would buy it someday. And, with COVID going on, I said, to my wife, I said, maybe this is when we should do it. And we talked to her mom, and her mom decided that it was the right time for her to step away as owner anyways. She still works there. And we took it over. And we kept it closed for 6 months, and we redid the building. We tore it apart basically, and put it back together. And now that restaurant is running, and it's a part of our life. So yeah, COVID happened, and it changed everything for us, really. But we knew we just couldn't sit back, because if you just sit back and you do nothing, then what good comes out of anything? So it's that saying, everything happens for a reason. I struggle with that saying too, because it happens for a reason if you make it for a reason. Like if you find something good. If I sat in my house the rest of my life after my injury, which people would have understood, they'd been like, Rick, he dealt with a lot. He was dealing with a lot. So let's leave him alone. Then what good is it? We got to do something with those things in our life. So yeah, we got the restaurant out of it, and we've been running that for the last, 2.5 years now.
And, I felt the same way until I was listening to my friend Ed Milet, his podcast. And he said something that rings true to every day. And I say it every day on my podcast. Things don't happen to you. They happen for you.
Right.
And everything is a teachable moment.
Absolutely.
So that's when, because as soon as COVID got down, I was with GNC and everything slowed down. And I'm like, great, everybody's going to be home. So listening to podcasts.
Right.
So this is going to be great. So I just switched it to, a positive thing.
That's right.
So now talk to us about business a little bit, because, if you've been in the military for a day or so, everybody knows what an SOP is, standard operation procedure.
Yep.
Everybody knows what a 9-line is.
Yeah.
A lot of us, when we get into business, we really don't have a business plan. We don't have an SOP, and we're just flying by the seat of our pants until we're $100,000 in debt and don't know what just happened.
Yeah.
So talk to us about having an SOP for your business and how being a veteran has actually helped you in business.
Yeah. So, well, thank God I live in a nation that cares about the military and being a veteran. So I would say that's the biggest benefit of being a veteran in my community is, some people will just come into my restaurant because I'm a veteran.
I mean, I didn't mean it that way. I mean, that's great too. I mean,
right.
But
I know what you meant.
For me, I've learned that things that I was taught in basic training has helped me in business. So talk about that.
Right. So, just being in a leadership role in the military, actually starting off in a following role, because as you're an E1 or an E2, you just got to learn to listen. That's a big step into owning a business. If you try to open a restaurant and you've never listened to anyone else that's ever owned a restaurant, you're not going to make it. You gotta listen to what other people are going to tell you. Thankfully, my friend Tom, he owned a restaurant, so I heard a lot of restaurant talk. So I learned to listen very well in the military, and then I learned slowly how to lead as well. So my wife runs the restaurant mostly because I'm on the road so much, but I get to do the books and so in my military career, one thing that you have to be is organized, and I love the organization that comes from, keeping the books and stuff like that. So that's one thing that I absolutely love. And I actually learned a lot. I went to a program at Cornell in New York, Ithaca, New York, called the Entrepreneur Boot Camp for Veterans with Disabilities, EBV. And I learned a lot about the hospitality industry. And I learned a lot about restaurants, and I learned about how to write a business plan. Now, that doesn't mean I wrote a business plan. I did not write a business plan. And you know what? If I really, really want to make this business successful, then I have to really enter into it. And with my life as out there speaking to kids in schools, I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. So we're good. We're successful, but we're not like crushing it because of we don't spend a lot of time to crush it. If you want to crush something, you got to spend time doing it.
All right. So now, like for me, we have one of the top podcasts in the world. I think we're like in the top 1%, but we sell t-shirts, we sell hats, we sell coffee. Obviously, I can't compete with Black Rifle Coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do it. Right. I can't compete on price. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when they get in business, they can try to compete on price.
Yeah.
And if you're competing on price, you can only go down,
Right.
But you have to differentiate your business from other businesses, whether that's like I'm a big Chick-fil-A guy. Yeah. I love Chick-fil-A. Yeah. I'll eat it 6 days a week, but their customer service is beyond, So how did you decide, all right, this is how we're going to be different than the other 8 other sub shops that are probably in your town?
Yeah, well, again, so that's where that veteran thing comes into play. I'm a veteran-owned business, and thank God I'm in a country that cares about that. We painted a big American flag on the front of the building. We let ourselves be known. We have a saying in our restaurant, and it's about the American dream and what the American dream is. And, and we support community, when somebody calls us and says, hey, can we get a food donation? Almost always. I think there's very few times I've said no. Now, at some point you do have to say no or you don't make money. But I think in our time there, we very, very rarely said that. So just being a veteran-owned business, also that restaurant has been there for 70 years. So it was pretty set, and we pretty much had a customer base. But one thing I know is if you don't take care of the people, they won't come back. And in the restaurant world, it's hard to say this as a restaurant owner. It's almost not even about the food. It's crazy. But if you make somebody feel good when they come in and they feel good when they leave, they will come back. Even if the food was okay. Now, I'm not saying our food's okay. I'm saying our food is good. But I'm saying that the reason people really come back is because they feel good when they come in and they feel good when they leave. And that's a lesson in life. That's not just a lesson in business. Like, make people feel good. They'll want to be around you. I don't know. That's just something that I know. And I don't know how much I learned of that from the military, but I think part of that's from the military as well. You have to connect with people to be a leader in this world. If you don't know anything about them, how can you be a leader?
And I totally believe that because we just went to see my mother in Myrtle Beach, and we go to this restaurant. And when I sit down, the waiter sees us, sits us down, goes in the back, gets all of our drinks that he already knows,
Right.
and brings it to us.
That makes you feel
No,
good.
no questions asked.
Yeah.
And, but he also gets a 25-30% tip every time because he knows my daughter since she's a little girl.
Yeah.
She called us by her first name. He hooked us. He connected on Facebook, sends us coupons.
Right.
He went above and beyond.
Yeah.
Even though prices went up with food by like 20%,
Yeah.
we're still going to go see him. I don't want to sit with anybody else but him.
Yeah. Right.
And
Be
I
that
think,
person. Be that person.
Yeah, and I think whatever you do, like you said, be that person. Now,
Yeah.
for the last second, like I said, we haven't talked about this yet, but you do have a daughter named Grace.
Yeah.
You have a very gentle and kind spirit. So talk to us about faith and how faith has kept you going all these years.
So, Richard, I will tell you right now, my faith roller coaster, because that's what my faith has been my entire life. It has the ups and downs. When I was in that hospital, though, my family was there, and outside of my mom and my dad, the person that was in my room the most was my chaplain. And I had an amazing relationship with him. I had an amazing relationship when I was struggling with faith and maybe asking like, why is this happening? And what am I going through? He was there to help me, to redirect me. And I have a lot of those people in my life because I do struggle with faith. And I have a very close friend named Brett. And Brett, once a month we sit down and we talk. And Brett and I just talk about that. And he helps me on that journey. Because again, I'm not going to get there on my own. I'm not. I'm going to need direction. Faith is a struggle of mine. But I'm telling you right now, when I struggle with it, and if I start questioning anything, I go right back to that day in Iraq. When I told you I gave up hope when I was laying on the ground and I was laying on my back on fire and I gave up, I didn't all of a sudden think, oh, I'm going to roll in one direction and I'm going to fall into a canal. Somebody pushed me into that canal. And there was nobody standing over me physically. So when I struggle with it, I can always go back to that day and just recognize that, God is a big part of my life. And there's no doubt in my life that he kept me here for a reason. And you know what? It would be a disservice to him if I just sat home and did nothing with it.
All right. So then I'm going to end us with two questions. It's a two-part question that I ask 1,000 people and I get 1,000 different answers.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's only one question, but because it's you get two.
All right.
Just because we're Rick squared.
I like it.
So now, we live in a crazy world. A lot of places are going back on lockdown. A lot of parents are driving Uber, DoorDash just to put food on the table. So we live in a very busy world. But if I ask somebody to take an actionable step in the next 24 hours, they're more likely to do it than because if I tell them to do something in 7 days, they're never going to get to it. But if I ask them to take an actionable step today, they're more likely to do it.
Yeah.
So two-part question. If somebody is struggling in business, what can they do in the next 24 hours to get some help? And then the most important question is, if somebody's struggling with their faith, what is something they can do in the next 24 hours to find some peace?
Sure. So in the business world, you got to make a change. And doing things over and over and over again, if you're struggling, that's what they say is insanity. Like you doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. That's not how it works. So you just have to make a change. And I know that means risk, and that's scary because risk is scary. But no successful person in this world, none, have never taken a risk. And just owning the business and being comfortable in the way you're doing things. And if it's not working, you have to make a change. So I say, you know what? Make a change today. Something. It can be little. And then when you see the change that you've made has made a difference in your business, now make a bigger change. So I would say make a change today. Maybe it's a small one. And then in faith, just talk to the right people. If you're struggling with faith, talk to the right person. And I know that in my life, I have the right people. It doesn't mean I always reach out to them. And that the only one that I can blame for that is me. So if I need to make a change in my faith today, I just need to reach out to the right people, or do the thing that not many people do, is pick up that book and just start reading. I don't care where you read, just open it and just start reading. I mean, how can you not believe something you've never read?
And it's something that I talk to people about it all the time. Sometimes the best prayer is just help.
Mm-hmm.
I need help.
Yeah.
And that's it. Because
Yeah.
he knows if you have a broken and contrite heart, he's going to hear you.
Yeah.
So sometimes just saying, you don't have to go through all the fancy schmancy stuff. Just say, God,
Yeah.
I need help. I'm struggling today.
Right. And we talk about prayer, and you don't have to kneel by your bedside and put your elbows on that bed and put your hands together. That's not what it really has to look like. I drive a ton. And when I drive and I turn that radio off when I'm not listening to my audiobooks, when I turn that radio off, that's when I pray. I don't have to close my eyes to pray. But I mean, what you're doing is you're just having a conversation with God. And when I'm in the car, that's when I have the most time. So that's when I have the most conversations with God. And, that's what prayer is, just having a conversation with God.
I love it. So last question is, how do we find you? How do we support your mission?
Yeah, so sweetheartsandheroes.com. That you can reach us there. We're on all the social media platforms, even though I have no clue how to use all the social media platforms. We are on all of them. Same thing, Sweethearts and Heroes on Facebook. Yeah, reach out to us. We are in schools. There's 180 school days. We're in schools, about 160 of them. So it's a busy schedule. But yeah, we love to be in schools. We love to reach out, and we're expanding our horizons right now. We just did the Marine Corps out in California. So that's how you can reach us, and we'd love to enter your community.
All right, Rick, and tell Tom when you see him, tell him thank you so much for everything that he does too. I can't wait to connect. Now, guys, as you guys know, I'm a big Joel Osteen guy, and I believe, like he says, you get to choose between being a victim or be the victor. And as you guys know, my tagline is today I decide. So guys, please make the decision to be the victor and not the victim. Rick, brother, thank you so much. I'm so humbled and grateful for your friendship, and hopefully we can build a generational relationship from here.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity, man. That's what I see this as, an opportunity.
I love it. Guys, I love you so much. Have an amazing day. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. I love you guys. Talk to you tomorrow. Rick, have an amazing week, brother.
Take care, Richard. Thank you so much. You as well.